Hey, I'm Luke. Here we discover albums that are truly vinyl worthy. In this series we dive deep into the discographies of various artists, album by album, song by song, in the search for vinyl worthy releases. My criteria for a vinyl worthy album is simple. It must be a collection of tracks that I enjoy from start to finish, with no tracks that I wish to skip. If an artist features in this series, then you can guarantee that at least one of their releases is considered vinyl worthy. Let's jump right into it. The John Butler Trio are an Australian roots rock band fronted by singer-songwriter and guitarist John Butler. Formed in the late 1990s in Fremantle, Western Australia, the trio built a reputation for great live performances and funk-driven grooves. Butler's distinctive open-tune guitar sound and socially conscious songwriting often addresses themes of love, environmentalism, and justice. The band combines activism with artistry, maintaining their independent spirit through their own label, Jarrah Records. I first discovered John in 2012, where I found him on a list of lesser-known great artists, and it was his recording of the ever-evolving instrumental masterpiece, Ocean. Many years later, it is nice to say that I am still seeing the 2012 Ocean recording being recommended online by people. Now, as mesmerising as the instrumental is, it is an instrumental, and I, like many, am not really drawn in by instrumental music as much, so it only demonstrated John's instrumental aspect of his abilities. So when I watched the video, I thought, wow, and then went about my day. So it took a little bit of time before I revisited John and discovered the trio. It was low-res YouTube videos of Better Than, Better Man, Good Excuse and Zebra that were my first memories of exposure to the trio. I've always been an albums guy, so I listened to Sunrise Over Sea. It became immediately apparent I had struck gold. For some reason, Grand National was not displayed at the time, so I moved on to Live at Red Rocks, and I bought the CDs, and they had plenty of playtime in the car as my mum, bless her, would drive me to college and back. She mostly liked it. She was always impressed by Ocean, but not so much of a fan of the Red Rocks Treat Your Mama guitar solo, however. We're not going to go too much into the live album side of things, as I have this video which I recommend watching where I talk more about my favourite live albums, which includes this one. So this was an extremely formative time for me with music. I was discovering grunge, Bob Dylan, The Clash, Streetlight Manifesto, and music had been influencing my image since about the age of 14 after discovering the late 2000s emo scene, regrettably. I was now 17 and phasing out of the emo aesthetic, thank God, for longer locks, which I would eventually start matting on my 18th birthday. So John had locks for many years, however I was actually not aware of this as he had cut them all off prior to me discovering him. My locks were actually influenced almost entirely by Christian Hopewell. Music culture surprisingly played little to no influence over my decision to mat my hair. It wouldn't be until later that I would even discover Bob Marley. But anyways, back to the music. So, Searching for Heritage was originally released on a cassette tape and sold by John while busking on the streets of Fremantle in 1996. The songs are rough, the recordings are all instrumentals, and it's not reflective of John as an artist as a whole. So I don't recommend starting here if first listening to John, as this is best treated as a look back to see where he started. With tracks 1 and 8, I prefer the busking version. It has a slightly faster tempo and more percussion. With tracks 2 and 8, John re-records a version with lyrics later, which I recommend over these two recordings. It's cool to see the development though. And with tracks 3 and 7, Desert Snow is longer than it needs to be. It was recorded on an 8-track and it's shorter, however noticeably lower in quality of recording. So it was 1998 when John would put out his self-titled proper debut, and it's a little bit all over the place as you can see with all of the different colours going on, and it's overall a flawed album, but it shows John's early talents. It's another one to be listened to for understanding his development, and John's vocals are very much unrefined on this album. John to me sounds like a poor man's Lane Staley of Alice in Chains, especially on track 2, Inspiration. But I do love the opening track, Valley, with the harmonics, a humble slow start to what moves to the main riff, and then the drums come in, and this becomes an absolute banger. The lyrics are simple and have an earthy theme, which caters for more attention to the fantastic instrumentals in this song, and the lyrics provide more of a flavour than the mainstay of the song, a very strong start. And just a note, on a recent remaster, there is a new version of Valley, where you can hear John's developed voice. However, the remastered version is quite different to the version originally on this album, and I do prefer the original. Despite my comments about John's vocals on track 2, I actually do think it's a keeper. However, track 3 Busted is a contender for being one of John's worst songs. The track is totally undeserving of its length, John's vocals veer into Kermit the Frog territory, and the song is just all over the place with the flow, and the lyrics are embarrassing if I'm honest. The whole song makes me cringe. But then we bounce back with Sister, and I think this is brilliant. It's really refreshing to have something so tight and short compared to Busted, and the riff is a winner, the treble section works fantastically, and the theme of the song is simple and wholesome. John's vocals are still a bit froggy, but they're passable on this. Track 5 is the original Ocean, and it's not as captivating as later recordings and versions John would come to do. This serves as more of a point of interest to see how a song can be reworked and improved over time. Track 6, Colours, is another long one at over 9 minutes. The main riff and melody are strong, but the 4-minute build-up with the a cappella isn't anything special and it detracts from the song. I think with some editing and reworking, it would make for a good song. I have to address the elephant in the room. John includes the use of the N-word multiple times in the song. The song is all about racism, and while I am confident John had the best intentions, the artistic use is not done to the best effectiveness with the lyrics on a whole, so it feels perhaps too risque for today's world. I think the gold standard is the way that Bob Dylan uses it in Hurricane, and I just don't feel like John has pulled it off in this song, if I'm honest. But I'd be interested to know what your thoughts are on this. Track 7, Crazy, is another long one at over 5 minutes, and again, the song is not strong enough to warrant it. The guitar uses a slap picking technique which allows for more spaces in between the mix, and it isn't as busy as most of the album, which is the only thing it has going for it if looking for a break in the album of busy guitar sections. The next track, Keeper, lives up to its name, as it is a keeper. Yes, it's another long one, but the song is good enough for it. The guitar riff, the bass, and the drums work well. It almost sounds like there's some strings in the mix too. The ending with the reverb is nicely done also. Indian Sky is a closing instrumental which is unessential. It doesn't have any memorable phrases that make me remember it. It's fine besides that, and the fact that this is already an album that needs trimming, I lean more towards skipping this one. So in the year 2000, the trio give us an EP. This EP is a collection of tracks that continues with the themes of social justice. With Pick Apart and Earthbound Child, I prefer the versions from Living 2001 to 2002. These two live versions plus Home Is Where the Heart Is, which is not a live recording, but for some reason lives on this live compilation album, is a keeper. So 2001 saw the release of 3, and at the time this was quite successful, and it held up as being one of the most popular albums in the band's discography. However, for me, as you can see, I don't quite rate this, as it's just not quite there yet for me. As an evolution from his debut 6 years later, John discovers some new production choices and effects pedals. Beyond that, many of the issues that were on the 1995 debut are also here. Like the debut, 3 suffers from bloated song lengths, poor lyrics and delivery, busy guitar work which becomes a grind after not long. The opener Better Man has become a fan favourite, and this is a very good version, just not my first pick. It's still a pillar for this album though. Next is Attitude, and it's grungy and feels quite aimless. In the live recordings known as the Max sessions, John reveals this song is about a housemate who started behaving shitty with him without saying why. Just a bit of trivia, and I wonder if that housemate ever did tell him why. Anyways, next up is Media, which is better, but still not a track I find myself seeking out. The arrangement sees a lot more space for the trio to be noticed, and some nicely produced drumming by Michael Barker and lovely double bass from Gavin Shoesmith. The backing vocals work well too. The instrumental at the end feels unnecessary, and the lyrics are again very on the nose, which if you've seen my last episode on Billy Bragg, I agree with a lot of left-wing artists. Yet, when it's not done well lyrically, it's very cringe to me. The next track, I believe, is a low point. For me, John's lyrics and delivery don't fit, and I don't enjoy listening to this one. Easy skip. With track 5, I feel like Take would be better received if we didn't have to get through the tracks before it, as at this point we're already deep into a long album, and I'm disappointed by this point. So at 8 minutes long, this track is still a better one, with the didgeridoo break and some good percussion to keep this one interesting. Life Ain't What It Seems is a slower one, and the guitar work here resembles what John would later do on some of his best slower songs. The lyrics are still not great, but this is still one of the better tracks. Okay, track 7, Money. In the past I was quite brutal about this track. It's not that bad, but it's still not earning of its length. And the final track, Foundation, just like with the debut, we leave on another uninteresting instrumental, which is overly long once again. So overall, with some new production ideas but weaker songs overall, this is an album that I didn't like when I first heard it, and I continue to feel the same way about it now. If I'm being very frank, then I find it very surprising that this was such a breakout album for the trio, and that people rated it as highly as they did. 2004 and What You Want. This EP is quite a head scratcher for me, as What You Want is a track put on the next LP, and the Pick Apart and Better Man versions had been previously released. So it's only the cover of Across the Universe, which is unique to this release, and it's okay. It's decent, I guess. Much better than the David Bowie cover version, I'll give it that, but the original is yet to be top. If anyone has a cover version of Across the Universe that they think is better than the original, do let me know though. And finally, we get to 2004's Sunrise Over Sea release. And this is where it's at. This album is an outstanding improvement. It's a triumph of an album. John finds his singing voice and hones his songwriting skills big time here. This is a long album, once again, but with way more tracks to go with it. The opener, Treat a Mama, is great. John keeps his political message, but learns about the effectiveness of subtlety in his lyricism. The wah is used very tastefully, and the female backing vocals add so much to the song overall. John's vocal delivery is like a mumbled rap, and it works. Depending on how I feel, I see this one as a pillar, sometimes not. There's quite a few different live versions of this one as well. The next track, Peaches and Cream, is perhaps the most basic of songs John had put out at this point in terms of technical guitar playing, but it demonstrates how he can craft a great song out of a standard tuning and that his vocals have significantly improved. The scat lyrics are a great musical idea for this one. The Live at Red Rocks version will always be my definitive version. I do have to wonder about the placement of this track on the album though, because I feel like it would have been better suited much later on. It feels like it was pushed to the front end for the sake of commercial success, but that makes no sense when Zebra is near the end. Or maybe they just didn't really feel like Zebra was going to be the lead single. I don't really know. Anyways, track 3, Company Sin, sees John telling the story of a character, and he succeeds using this technique as it makes the message much less direct and didactic, much like how Bruce Springsteen did it for Atlantic City. The bass is fantastic throughout, the solo is exquisite, and the mix following the solo and the stereo panning is a peak moment. This is where things get a little bit messy with different releases and where things sit on the CD. So on my CD, Better Man was included next. Again, my definitive version is the Red Rocks version, and this is a much more subdued, shorter version compared to when played live and on the 3 LP. For its differences, this is a worthwhile keeper on the album though. Next, with What You Want. What You Want is simply gorgeous with the strings production and layout. It is another example of how John has improved his singing, and just everything about this track is fantastic. Damn to Hell is a simple short banjo tune which is hitting on the same target of greedy corporate people. If you're going to do it, this is how to do it well. Short and sweet and using thematic imagery. This is a huge step of improvement compared to how John previously approached expressing these sentiments. The production style used on this works so well, especially after the grandiosity of the previous track. And the transition into Hello with the tuning is a nice touch. The main riff for Hello is great. The bass is thick, Consider how much space there is in the mix for each band member. Older JBT tracks were often so preoccupied with John's busy guitar, but John has learned to hold back, and all the benefits that come with it are very clear to be seen, or heard in this case. The solo sounds Lateralis era Tool inspired, and the drumming is fantastic also. Bound to Ramble is another banjo track. This time it's longer. We also have strings and a bowed upright bass with soft sticks on the drums. It creates a vivid atmosphere. John's singing also needs credit here too. This is a band now and not a backing band for a guitarist. It really all comes together. Seeing Angels is another builder and it reaches beautiful heights. The outro is great too. There'll Come a Time is like something from his debut instrumentally. It has a great driving rhythm and the production on the vocals work well too. As previously mentioned, I feel like Zebra belongs on the front end of the album, maybe after Company Sin. Either way, this one is a true sing-along jam, and it's the first real venture into having some groovy fun for the trio, which would become something the guys would seek more of in the future. Mist is an instrumental, but keep in mind this is not over 10 minutes long, this is quite short at just 2 minutes and 24 seconds, so well done for keeping that one so short. It doesn't feel out of place where it is either. It would be my first track to cut if I had to remove tracks from the album, so that's why I consider this one to be not a clear keeper by comparison to all the others. Old Man is a continuation of great songwriting. The tone of the guitar and the drumming in this one is class. The final track, Sometimes, is a great closer finally. The intimacy of the start for this to grow into a full band with lots of backing vocals is executed to perfection. John really shows off his improved vocals here too. So all in all, this album is simply brilliant from start to finish and is almost close to perfect other than the track placements on the 2 tracks I pointed out. How John went from 3 to this in just 3 years is astonishing. I suppose we were really building up to this with some of the examples that we'd seen on previous albums like with Better Man, Valley and Sister, and it was just a matter of John really getting his vocals together, being brutal with the songwriting process and editing songs down with its length, as well as honing those production skills that he would have learnt over the years. Next up is 2007 with Grand National. So Sunrise Over Sea was commercially accessible and Grand National takes it a step further. As you can see, this is a vinyl worthy album for me. I keep every track and there's plenty of pillars here as well. This is probably my favourite album of John Butler Trio and is up there as one of my all-time favourite albums, full stop. The opener Better Than is a great light tune that you can move along with the bass to and sing along with. Along with John's other banjo-based songs, this track inspired me to learn banjo and I soon discovered just how hated the banjo was. Yet I find even amongst banjo haters, they tend to at least not mind the use of banjo in this song. Next up, The Fun Doesn't Stop with Daniela. This is a song for his wife, which features beatboxing, harmonica licks, rap-like delivery, and a fitting guitar solo. This is clearly a funkier John Butler Trio, which leads us into Funky Tonight, where the party continues. This is one hell of a jam, just perfection. The live versions are incredible also. Up next is Caroline, which is this album's own What You Want. The song is about Caroline Reed Robertson, who in 1999 at age 19 murdered 15-year-old Rachel Barber. Both this song and What You Want as well as Ocean were featured in the 2009 film In Her Skin, made about the story. The descending melody and the vocals that follow it are gorgeous. It's a very tasteful treatment in the lyrics too. The string section is lush and the drum creates a hell of an atmosphere. Perhaps the placement of this track should be closest to Devil Running near the middle to the end of the album, as the next track, Good Excuse, is a return to a fun jam about getting on with adversity, and the placement of Caroline just feels quite off because it doesn't fit in with the tone of all the other tracks around it really. Used to Get High is another fun jam, but it has more of an edge to it with it using more of the minor key. This is great live. The use of production is most apparent here with this studio version though. Some could say that they overdid it with the production, but I quite like it. Gov Did Nothing is an absolute banger. I love the intro. It's like it's welcoming you into a seeming paradise only for the riff to introduce turmoil in the region and serious business ensues. If we are comparing this track to Colours from the self-titled release and his attempt to touch such a topic, Gov Did Nothing blows it out of the water. We even have our own great gig in the sky moment with the female vocalist during the solo. And then the horn section near the end adds some chaos, which is really fitting. On Grooving Slowly, we take it back to basics. It's a simple tune for John's wife, yet again. It does exactly what it says in the title. The bass is the winner, and the harmonies on the chorus are so warm. There's a small bit of percussion on this, which is added in sparingly, and it adds so much too as well. Next is Devil Running, which I feel is out of place. It should be after Gov, and then Caroline after Devil Running, and then Grooving Slowly. It would just keep the consistency of the mood. This being the heaviest song on the album, it has great atmosphere, the effects and doubling on the vocals are great. The riff and the vocals together are strong as well. Losing You is a romantically hopeful tune with a fantastic guitar melody which John follows with his vocals. At this stage in his life, John's wife has proven to be quite the muse. Gotta get me a girl like that. Nowhere Man is a real chill jam. I love the beginning lyrics where John admits he has no idea where he's going with them. It shows some awareness and he's just having some fun. It's also got a more sincere message to it about how John has finally found his place with his family. Fire in the Sky is simply incredible. Total perfection. The textures and solo in this are too good for this planet. A contender for my favourite John Butler Trio song. Gonna Take It is a great finale, which is like a summation of the entire album. You have the chill groove and the funk jam with the instrumentals, but also the political and philosophy of John all in one song. Okay, 2010, April Uprising. This one sees further continuation of John moving into a more accessible sound. This album has been criticised by fans of his older work for being too commercially focused as well, losing his political focus, and they claim that John lost his way ever since. To me, this is by no means a bad album. It starts off much stronger than it finishes, just about limping its way into being considerably vinyl worthy. Track 1, Revolution, is solid enough. Next, One Way Road is a wicked groovy track. This hits the same political beats we've come to expect from John. However, I get the feeling the flavour is too pop for many to swallow. Not me though, it's a favourite of mine. Next, Come On Now is similar again, where it's a fun driving pop song that just gets me moving. I'd Do Anything is the closest the trio have come to sounding like Red Hot Chili Peppers, minus the California-isms. It's decent. Ragged Mile sees the return of the banjo, and it has a driving pulse again that I dig very much. I love the simplicity of Johnny's Gone. I've heard the live at Red Rocks version more, so it's taking me a little bit of adjusting with the more laid-back vocals John gives on the studio version. Close to You is again another driving track that gets me moving and singing along. The riff is memorable and feels great to play. The Boots and Cats falling on the floor drumming works perfectly here also. I'm fine with Don't Wanna See Your Face. It's fun. I can see how this track perfectly demonstrates how John has moved away from his old sound, and some fans felt alienated by it. Take Me is fine again. By track 10, we're now getting into the later quarter of the album where the quality dips. To Look Like You stands out as the best of the last few tracks though. The rest of these tracks I actually struggle to remember. Only You would have been a keeper, but I had to dock a rating for the awful bridge about the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus. What was that all about? It took me some years after getting deeply into John Butler Trio before I would even listen to April Uprising. A big reason of this was because many of the tracks were on Live at Red Rocks from 2012, and I didn't feel the need to hear the studio versions so soon after. Going back to when I was 16 and 17, my only understanding of John Butler Trio was Sunrise Oversea, Grand National and Live at Red Rocks, which I still consider to be some of my favourite music releases of all time. And back then, that's all I knew about John. So to me, he was like a musical god. And I feel fortunate that I was able to just live with those three releases for quite some time. Until later, when I would then come to listen more to the evolution of John and his music, which is good to see the progression for sure. 2014 sees Flesh and Blood, and when this one first came out, it was a struggle for me to get into, and returning to it years later, I see that my thoughts are only really consolidated. It's hard to accept that this came out 11 years ago, most of all for me. Time really has flown by. The opener, Spring to Come, is a solid track to start with. Living in the City never sat right with me, and I can now express why. The tone is so similar to stock music, which can often be found in sports events. I don't know about you guys, but I just wince whenever I hear that stock music is so bad. Cold Wind isn't quite as bad, but it's still very forgettable. Bullet Girl is an improvement though. I like the keyboard melody, the percussion, and the backing vocals towards the end in particular, but the next two tracks, Devil Woman and Blame It On Me, are such nothing tracks for me. Easy skip. Only One was a single, and to me it is the clear standout. The chorus is one of John's most catchiest, and the pan drums make this a breezy pop hit for me. It seems that after using the pan drums on the live versions, especially at Live at Red Rocks, that they have been used in some of the future recorded songs, like this for example. Good decision. Love me some pan drums. And sadly to say, the rest of the tracks are again just nothing to me. Track 12 is a bonus track. It's better than most of the other tracks I skip, and I couldn't even find track 13 online. 2018 and Home. John's sound moves further into the pop realm with overtones of contemporary country. It's not to my taste. However, I keep a few tracks from this album. The opener, Titian Blue, wins me over. It's so clearly more pop than older John Butler Trio material. However, I am not anti-pop, and in this case, I really enjoy this song. Wade in the Water is as close to an older style John Butler Trio we get on the album, with the lap slide guitar. Just Call has a lovely melody. The rest of the song in terms of production works. The lyrics in the first verse are my least favourite part of the song though, but the lyrics after the first chorus are much improved. Running Away again is a good in-between the world of older John Butler Trio and this newer pop sound. It would be a pillar, but for the very weak bridge. This would be the peak of the album if not for it. Track 5 is another song about the joys of touring. This is probably the biggest departure in sound John has taken yet. I don't dislike it, it's just that it does nothing for me. And it's the same for the next 3 tracks. They do nothing for me to stand out and they're very skippable. Track 9, Tell Me Why, is clearly country coded, almost to a cliche, and lyrically in the verse, in theory, I should hate it, but in reality, I actually don't. I don't think it will grow on me much, but there's just enough here in the chorus to be specific, as well as the laid-back groove that keeps this as a fine background tune. And I feel very similarly with track 10. Track 11 had potential as I liked the verses, but the chorus was not doing it for me at all. We Want More is a fine track to end on, however it feels like it is missing the edge that it could have had. I didn't feel the passion here. So there's a bit of a gap then between 2018 and John's next release, which was in 2024, which started the 4 Seasons. 4 Seasons was intended to be 3 albums solo and then 1 where John would return with a band. And I don't know if he's going to be calling it the trio anymore, because really he'd been performing with a bigger band than just 3 of them since 2018 with Home. And I actually saw that tour. It was a good tour from the performance that I saw in Manchester at the time. Played quite a few of the older classics and just a few of the newer bits, which was a nice balance for me considering I wasn't massively keen on Home and then Flesh and Blood. So Still Searching was the first of these 4 Seasons releases, and honestly, I don't think I'll probably return to these. These are instrumentals based around banjo and his guitar, and while there's nothing inherently wrong with any of these, I just don't find them to really capture my attention or really even go in the background all that well for really much purpose. By vast contrast to his next release, which was Running River, also in 2024, because this one really got me. It was intended to be a meditative album, and it really does that. It goes so well in the background for some ambience and really chills me out. Like, I've listened to this a few times all the way through. It's quite long, but it really, really works for me. I find that I will return to this one quite a few times over the years, as it is very comforting. 2025 saw the third season with PRISM, and this is John going solo, obviously performing with other people with his band set up, but not writing with other people, it would seem. And for the most part, this is not great. It's got a lot of skippers, but it's got a couple of keepers and John's best song in years with Gets No Better. So first of all, King of California is decent. I can enjoy this one without really thinking too much about it. It is enjoyable. And then Gets No Better is an easy pillar for me. I think this is one of the best pop songs I've heard in quite some time. And it's quite long for a pop song as well. It's clearly a pop song, but John does it in the way that only John can, where he does it his way. And I really respect that about John, even though there's quite a lot that I skip over in this part of his career. I can't say that he's doing it for anyone but himself at this point, because I do believe that he's probably quite content with what he's got. And he is more than aware that he's probably got a lot more than anyone else will ever have in his life. And material items are not what are probably most important to him. So I don't see him chasing success and fame, absolutely not. I think he's hidden away, if anything, for the most part. But he's tried to connect with his fans in ways that he's tried to get his music heard still, which is fair enough. And with Tripping On You, again, it's clearly a pop song. This is selected as a single, and it's just a feel-good summer song, really. And it works for me. The rest of the tracks, they just don't do anything for me, though. And in particular, I think the first track, Going Solo, in particular, is particularly bad, in my opinion. But, you know, not everyone is capable of being absolutely perfect all of the time, and I would not expect that even from one of my favourite artists such as John Butler. So I am still very much looking forward to everything that John puts out going forward in the future. I'll be covering his next releases as they happen. Thanks for watching this episode. Like and subscribe if you feel like it. Drop me a comment on where you agree or disagree, or share something interesting that I may have missed. Alright, peace and love, bye 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 bye.